read his background, Neal Conlon is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, entrepreneur, and a performance coach who helps leaders and organizations unlock their highest potential through mental fitness, discipline, and also AI integrative strategies. As the founder of Press Forward, Neal combines military precision with an emotional intelligence to help people lead through clarity, resilience, and impact. Additionally, he's raised millions of dollars for multiple projects and again helps to implement AI into business structure. So let's welcome Neal to the stage.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today.
That's it.
So this will be more of a fireside chat interview.
I think I'm on. Yes.
Yeah. So this will be more of a kind of an intimate vibe, and I just wanted to get to know you a little bit better, but also share some nuggets of what you're currently seeing in the market of both M&A, but also the value creation within companies. I think that's extremely important as we get into that. So yeah, share with me a little bit of the background and where you're at.
Yeah, I'll take a few minutes here because I want people to really understand when I talk about the M&A side and the AI stuff that we're doing in business. I want you to understand where I'm kind of coming from on this. So New York City native, all four of my grandparents are immigrants, all came into the country, all different ways, like literally boats and planes and all that stuff. Real troublemaker growing up, kicked out of 3 schools before I was 17, beaten by a police officer at a very young age, pistol whipped actually. Decided that if I continued on that path, it would not serve me well. And so I joined the United States Marine Corps, spent 8 years actively deployed in the Marine Corps, pre and post 9/11, served in 27 different countries across the globe, lived on an aircraft carrier for 2 years, well, the size below an aircraft carrier, it's called LHD-5, and decided to get out of the Marine Corps and didn't know what I was going to do. And so I got a job running security, physical security, at a building. The address is 135 East 57th Street. The reason why that address is so important is because that is the building that they moved all of the 9/11 companies into after 9/11. So you got this big corporate building with PTSD. So retinal scanners, security guards carrying guns, canines, you name it. It's also one of the richest buildings, was one of the richest buildings in New York City, and I ran security there for about 6 months. During that 6 months, every day at lunch, my task was to go to the guy at the front desk who was badging everybody in and relieve him so we could go to lunch. And I would sit there every day and I'd watch all these people coming in at lunch in these tailored suits and $5,000 shoes and beautiful women with $20,000 purses. And I had no fucking idea what they did. And it just ate away at me that there was something out there greater than just doing physical security for people. I wrote up this really bad resume off of the typewriter in the back office and went floor to floor in this building 2 months later and started handing my resume out to every single floor. And when I say some of the richest Cantor Fitzgerald was in this building, Galleon Group, GAM, Trump had an office in our building. I mean, like literally the richest companies in the world had their headquarters offices here. And I went up to this one floor, went to go try and find the HR guy, couldn't find the floor, couldn't find the HR guy, and was walking out, and this big, huge, muscular dude busting out of his suit is walking down the hallway, and I literally, again, was a Marine for a bunch of years. I had zero business acumen at that point. Was walking by, and I said, "Hey, buddy, here's my resume. Can you give this to the HR guy?" And this was my previous, now deceased mentor, Scott Minard. He was the chief investment officer of Guggenheim Partners, the hedge fund, and they hired me and put me in the mailroom. And it set off this catalyst where 6 months later, I'm working with this chief technology officer of Guggenheim Partners on this thing called algorithms that they're using. And it set off this chain of events where I'd work at Guggenheim Partners for 2 years, learning about algorithms. They sent me back to school to learn how to code Python and Ruby on Rails. I then left that company and went to work for a small company called Cushman & Wakefield, where I was the global chief of staff, working directly for the CEO, Bruce Mosler. Interacted with Donald Trump and every single politician, Larry Silverstein. During that time I was at the company, we went from 14,000 employees globally to 23,000 employees, and the company went from private to public during that time frame. I then moved on to worked at NBC for a period of time, where I learned about out-of-home advertising, which is now called digital advertising, and then went on to Fortress Capital, Morgan Stanley, where at Morgan Stanley I ran desktop publishing for them globally, which what that means is every single investment deck that the venture side produced for 3 years, I read to make sure it was perfect before it went back to the investment team. And I didn't even realize what was going on at that point. It was just like osmosis of I was just in transition from the military, learning from really, really smart people. And then one day, as I was reading Uber's Series D, I was like, I get how it just clicked all of a sudden. Now, what you'll notice is I never have once been in a single college class, and never once applied for college or anything like that. I learned through doing. And so I left Morgan Stanley. I then started my own company because I read in a PE deck about digital marketing becoming a category to invest in. I built that company. I built a piece of intellectual property. I then sold that intellectual property to Omnicom. I then read through another investment deck that cybersecurity was becoming a thing. And I was like, all right, we're going to become a cybersecurity person. What do cybersecurity people look like? They have beards and get tattoos. Literally.
True.
I said, all right, tattoo artists we go, beard we grow. I then took a company, I was the number 3 at a company named Plurilock, which is a Canadian company. We took that company public on the TSX in under 2 years. And then because I had done that so quickly, I got recruited into a company named AppGuard, which was a small piece of technology that came out of a CIA operation. And over 3 years, we raised 5 rounds of capital for a total of $112 million. And then in 2019, while we were planning on taking it public on the NASDAQ, because we had CIA intelligence on our board, we were notified about COVID prior to everybody else knowing about it. And we made an executive decision to sell it to a private equity fund prior to the world shutting down. And then I realized how much of a masochist I was for those 6 years that I had done that back to back. And I've spent the last 5 years really digging into how can I help people not have to go through the mental health challenges and all the burden that has to go with that. Because while that story sounds fantastic, the other side of it is I stepped on top of a balcony, almost killed myself at the Lowe's Hotel down in South Beach, Miami. I went through a divorce. I have a child who didn't speak to me for 5 years, all because I chose work first. And I was working 18 hours a day, 6 days a week for about 8 years. So I tell all business owners, bankers, Carnegie Mellon people, Cornell fuckers, you could not beat the amount of knowledge that I have in this game because you're probably better at taking care of yourself than I was for about 8 years of my life. And now, fast forward, we have a coaching advisory practice with about 10 coaches on staff in various categories, and it's specifically advise, investing, and scaling is what we focus on. We have a venture studio where we help people organize their businesses for buying and selling. And then because I've been working directly with what used to be called algorithms, which is now called AI, we have an AI advisory practice. I'll give you guys a case study that you guys will really like, where the biggest problem that we see with businesses is when they start the business, unless they come out of the startup space, they were never thinking about acquisition. So then they build up to a certain point, they're making great money, they get to a point where they then want to sell that business, and then they realize the books are a mess, the perks they're giving out to people are great, but can't be put into synergies. And so we've got AI models that we can go into a company's OpEx, and we can re-engineer the technology or the lack of technology in your business, and we can increase the value of the business by about a 3 to 6x multiple just by putting technology into the business. So all of those HVAC companies, laundry places, construction companies, everything, where they're all still doing napkin math and they're just kind of winging it or running to Home Depot for parts and putting margin on top of it, we can come in and engineer through our algorithms the point of that you have to realize. I'll give you guys one more example and then we can talk some more. But you have to realize that about we can out AI, because we don't think outsourcing is not the thing, but we can AI about 92% of the entire business today. And the only thing you really focus on, the 8%, is going to be the branding piece and the personal touch. But 92% of every business we can outsource. So we can AI sales lead gen for people. We can AI customer support. We can AI the accounting. We can AI HR. We can AI all of it to a point where the EBITDA will just drastically shift forward, which then makes traditional M&A models actually not relevant as much anymore, because you have to realize now where we're shifting into. The biggest challenge people have right now is this. I have this metaphor I use that resonates with everybody. When I first landed in Austin 5 months ago, I just moved here 5 months ago. I came here and went to I have a coach, his name is Brendan Bouchard, if anyone knows who he is, and I went to his event. And I came outside after the event was over and went to go get an Uber. And while I opened up my Uber, a notification slid into my Uber app and said, "Would you like to have a Waymo instead?" And I went, all right, let's try the self-driving fucking car thing. So the Waymo shows up, I get in, we make it about 4 blocks down the road. And we stopped at a red light, and an Uber driver pulls up next to us. He's got no one in the back seat, but he's got his windows down. He's probably done for the day. And he's looking over, and I think it's the first time he's seen a Waymo, and he's looking in the car. And I had this very weird realization moment. I'm like, this fucker's looking at his future. And he's still sitting there looking, and the light turns green, and we pull off. And I really thought about that the whole way home, how that guy is seeing his future. Number one, how much longer does he continue to drive Uber before shifting strategies? He's got a family to care for. He's got a job, he's got kids, he's got things to pay for. Chances are that guy's going to keep on driving his Uber until Waymo takes over the whole city, and then he's going to blame the economy, he's going to blame geopolitics, he's going to blame inflation, taxes, all the rules, all these things that we all conjure up as entrepreneurs and business owners in our lives, and yet that guy will still continue to do that job and in tandem to that, Uber is still recruiting drivers. There are people who are thinking about becoming truck drivers. There are people going to school to learn how to truck drive. And yet we've got about 12 to 18 months before this upheaval really, really fast forwards. And the thing that we find over and over again in the businesses that we work with is that every single one of the industries and categories are going to go through that Uber driver's experience in the next 12 to 18 months. And the business owners and the investors and the strategists that are not thinking about that, even if you're doing good, because that Uber driver is still doing good, he's still making money, but if you're not planning for what's coming, you're going to have a real problem in the very near future.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss a little bit more about you're pro AI for sure, and there's been systems that you've created for companies. Can you explain a little bit more of the framework in essence that you implement into these companies? I know every framework may be a little bit different, but you have some pillar that you like to implement.
Yeah, so I look at it like this. I think we're all around the same age brackets. The Kindle came out 7 or 8 years ago, and everybody threw their hands in the air and was like, oh my God, books are dead. And they were for 8 months, right? And then everyone realized I actually like a fucking book, right? And so some stores and businesses went away and other places persevered. And now we buy books from Amazon. that is a very microcosm of what is going on right now and what will go on for the next 2 or 3 years. And it's hard to understand where to like lay your feelings on AI when we're in the shift of change right now. But I think from everyone I talk to, they're excited about not having to ever touch an Excel sheet ever again, right? And so I always say, and this actually builds off of a little bit what Brad was saying earlier, was before you have an emotional problem with AI, you have a math problem. And so what we really look at in our business is we take people through an assessment of every vertical in their business. We look at the total cost of what that resource is. We look at what the actual ROI is off of that. And then we look at what it would take for us to implement an AI tool into it. So for example, we have a proprietary AI SDR sales bot, right, that not only does phone calling, but also does email qualifications. And so the biggest problem is, you know, in traditional sales, you're gonna hire somebody, you're gonna give them 6 months, they're gonna spend 3 months onboarding, 3 months to build a pipeline, you probably give them 3 more months to close. If they close less than 30% of their deals, you're gonna fire them and start all over again. That's the math problem.
True.
That's every sales organization in the company. The hard part is that because they don't have alternative models to that, it just becomes try it again, try it again, try it again, try it again, and then you lose all the intellectual property that is built in that. So in our model, we look at what the total cost of that person is, and then once we master that salesperson through an AI and make it better and better and better, we can then build 20 AI salespeople for you built off that intellectual property. And the same thing goes on. I mean, we have clients right now where the business owner doesn't even want to be the CEO, and we're building an AI CEO for the business owner to leverage so they don't have to work in their business every day. So the CEO will actually tell the employees what to do every day, and it's an AI.
I'd be curious, and many of you probably know too, but I'd be curious from your perspective, what industries are going to be most disrupted, and you know, who are coming to you to make changes or shifts in their systems?
Anything with a mid-level management. Mid-level management across the board is on the chopping block for sure. I think also, you know, I think traditional salespeople, I think to Brad's point earlier also, the world of social selling and becoming a personal brand is going to be the place to really expand. You need to have a personal brand because a lot of the AI stuff can't create that trusted system, right? But anything mid-level management, anything sales, anything that works in a spreadsheet traditionally. And I think that the other side of it is, you know, the companies that do embrace AI and do use it, like there is no way that you as a human can compete with a company that is using it. We have one company we're working with right now. It's a $20 million a year company. It is a requirement that by the time that the CFO set the actual requirement, by the time everyone does their taxes next April, every employee in the company is expected to have a fully trained and built co-pilot for their business. So for every single operating function, there is a co-pilot being built. So there is CEO.ai, there is CFO.ai, there is Chief Legal Officer.ai, Salespeople.ai, Marketing.ai, even Administrative Assistant.ai, for the purposes that they have said, we're going to keep everybody here. We just need you all to get better at what you do. And one of the biggest things we're helping people do is taking like A-, B, and C players in the business and turning them into the whole organization is nothing but A+ players across the board, which will then just increase the value of the business.
Let's talk more about valuation, and obviously, like you said, there's a past M&A, you know, value creation life cycle of a business, but now we're going to step into the future of what you're seeing right now and how quickly AI is going to be able to validate the valuation of a company, and then also the exchange of hands. What are you seeing there?
Yep. So anyone who's ever done an M&A transaction, the most expensive piece of it is an integration piece, right? It becomes very, very expensive to do. That's the first piece. The second piece is anyone who's ever bought or sold a business, the likelihood of it ever being the way that you think it was supposed to go is not going to happen every single time, right? And so, those are the two areas that we've really been focusing on that side because, the OpEx, right, which is where all of the burn of the company goes into, is a really institutional space for AI to be leveraged to add more understanding of what that value is, which then increases the multiple and can create those synergies into it, right? So, we find that even in HVAC, we're doing HVAC roll-ups now, where we can partner with 3 or 4 HVAC companies, but none of them have good CRMs or none of them have any good, they have all different accounting systems. But AI you can ingest all of that data into one place. You can organize it, edit it, clean it up, drop it into a CRM very, very quickly, ask the AI to find other predictive revenue models and places, and then you can go back to a company and say, this is where we are with our revenue, but now we can forecast out and guarantee almost a 30 or 40% increase in revenue because we now have found kind of these gems inside of it. And we're doing this and being able to argue the point with private equity funds to be like the synergies there are clear. So I'll give you a real quick case study. A services-based business we're working with they were doing $7.5 million in revenue, 130 employees. And when they came to us, they only had about $500,000 in EBITDA after everything was all set aside. So a 1.2 to 1.7 multiple on a business that's been around for 10 years, nobody's interested in that business at all. We were able to take their infrastructure without firing anybody, but take all of their systems, all of their databases, everything, and basically create some synergies and some value-added context is what we call it, which then boosted up their EBITDA to about $2.5 million. And then we were able to pitch that into a private equity fund, and the private equity fund says, this is interesting and great, we would give you $9.5 million in order for us to buy this business. The founder said, after capital gains, that still doesn't make me happy. And so we said to the founder, great, what number makes you happy? And they said, well, $13 million makes the capital gains go away, gives me enough money that I don't have to work again, and goes back and go forward. We then spun our AI tool into the database and said, how do we get this company from from this amount of revenue to this amount of revenue, create the formula for the path of least resistance? That was last June, this June that just passed. The AI cranked out the model, and they spent the last 3 months implementing that model. For September, they forecasted a 41% increase in revenue and are on track to do $15 million by the end of the year. And we immediately go back to the private equity fund and say, here's where we are now, and here's where we're going to be by the end of the year. If you don't buy the company for $13 million right now, it's going to cost you $18 by the end of the year. That's how fast you can move through these things now.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I don't want to be the only one asking questions, and I know you guys probably have a few questions as well. But before we do that, thank you for showing up today.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing up. That's what you guys have done today as well. You've showed up. So let's open the floor again. We got some questions regarding AI, systems, scalability. Kent, right over here.
Yeah, so can you make sure and repeat the question before you answer?
Yeah.
Sure.
So, love the AI. So I spent a bunch of years at IBM, and I was on the Watson team.
Nice.
So everything I did a talk 2017 about AI and machine learning and what was going to happen, and I said it's going to disrupt stuff. I missed a couple of the industries that it went into, but it's starting to happen. So it's interesting to hear your tale of it and the exponential growth and acceleration of it. Because a year ago it was going like this, and then it's like this.
Yeah.
It's going to increase it. Would you guys run models against the operational side of it? Do you get any resistance with people like testing the model out versus what they in their mind thought it was going to look like and validation of that? versus what AI told it to implemented?
Yeah.
You kind of understand what I'm.
Yeah. So your question is, do we get any pushback from people when we're trying to operationalize this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think two things are, one, I think we always start with what the end game is first. A lot of people that are dabbling in AI, you have to go through this thing called hallucinating, where if you just throw information into the AI, it is following a process. And so therefore it's only going to be as good as the prompt that it was put into, and so it will make up stuff. Like AI has been known to cite books that don't exist and stuff like that. But we tend to go into like the example I gave you on our case study, we were like, if we want to get to this number, right, give us the steps to get there. So you start with the outcome first and work backwards. And then when we take those numbers back into talking to the human, right, like that's really a big thing. If we said, luckily in this example it wasn't the case, but if the case was the best way for you to get valued at this multiple was for you to can these 5 people, they're going to go, we're not doing that.
Right.
Great, but then we've already run other scenarios. You don't have a path to this. And I think one of the things that AI modeling for business owners is like the biggest like ego pull you can go through, because something that is probably more intelligent than you is going to tell you exactly what you need to do, give you the path of least resistance to what it is you need to do, and then you've got to decide if that's really what you want. And that's a big piece of I think where we differentiate ourselves, because we're going to be obviously looking at the models and the financial stuff, but the mindset that you need to go through, where we go against CFOs all the time, and that CFO has become the expert in that business. I know my numbers, I know how to do this in my business. But it's like what I talked to someone earlier, I talked to you about, like, I think it was longevity clinics, for example, where they normally would be buying their models, buying their products and then just reselling them, are now looking at like the Paul Mitchell model, which comes from the hair salon industry, all these models are now out there in the world. And if you were to say to the AI, I want to build this model in this industry because this model hasn't been implemented in this industry yet, you become a game changer for that entire industry. So, but I think to answer your question directly, it is start with the end game and work backwards, and then run multiple scenarios.
That's good. Any further questions? Right here, Lucy.
I have a question. So you started cyber security AI companies, but you said that you didn't go to college, so you don't seem like to have a programming or coding background. So do you hire people with that technology background as your employees when you do those AI products or cyber security?
Yes, great question. Love that. I'm a lot calmer these days than I was 10 years ago. For 10 years, I was a masochist and a bull in the china shop. And I built 20 mobile apps on my own, self-coded. Terrible at it. Every single one was terrible. I hated it and would sit there and do it. Definitely had a little bit of an Adderall problem for a couple of years, because I would sit up and built dozens and dozens of websites. I'm HubSpot certified, Salesforce developer, architect. I used to sit there and say that I need to learn how to do all this stuff. And then, similar to what Brad said again, about 7 or 8 years ago, I was like, I need to start paying people to teach me how to do the thing. And so I would go out and find a Salesforce developer, teach me how to do the thing, just so I could talk enough about it, and then I would pay someone else to do it. But I needed to be able to keep up with what they're telling you, because the problem with experts is they know they're the expert, and they're going to talk over your head to demonstrate the value that they have. And so I would take a Salesforce class, and then the engineer would come in and be like, all right, well, I don't want to dumb this down for you or not, but here's how an object works in Salesforce. And then I would teach myself. Now, fast forward, we have 21 AI engineers on our team. We have a whole finance team that collaborates with them to partner with them to be like, how do we get this outcome going? And now we outsource the pieces if we need to, but I banged my head against a wall for about 10 years and would love to not have someone else have to go through that, but it's how I really did it. And now, because I've done that, my belief system is, I think there's an AI that can do that. And I'll give you guys like one quick example. It's obnoxious, but I say this example because it's true. We had a company we were working with. The PE firm came back to us with some really interesting formula questions. And we shifted it over to the team of the company that was trying to sell into the PE. The CFO came back to me, and this is a CFO who makes $450,000 a year, went to Cornell. He said, it'll take me 2 weeks in order for me to come back to you with those numbers. There's no way, as the person who's brokering that conversation, I'm telling the PE firm I need 2 weeks on those numbers. And so I went to the CEO of the company, and I did this myself. This wasn't me giving it to one of my people. And I said, look, I got this thing from the PE firm. I need this answer. Your CFO said they need 2 weeks to do the numbers. And the CEO, who has to believe that the $450,000 they spend a year on this person is the right number to make, said, if he says it's 2 weeks, it's 2 weeks, Neal. And I said, okay, how much does the CFO make? $450. I said, great. I've got a person on my team that can give you those numbers by tomorrow morning, but it's going to cost you $10,000. Which one is more important to you? And the CEO said, send me an invoice. I sent the invoice to the CEO. CEO paid it. I said, I need access to this doc, this doc, this doc, this doc. Drop it in this secured drive for me, and we'll take care of it. They dropped it into we have a secure drive where all of our stuff goes into. Our AI runs on top of it. I then I took the email from the private equity group, copied and pasted it into our AI, and the AI came back with the answer in like 3.5 seconds. So I proved to myself that I can make $10,000 in 3 seconds. It's obnoxious, but that's where we're headed right now. I gave that number back to the PE firm, and now we're in due diligence for acquisition of that company. That CFO doesn't know any better. That's the problem that everybody has right now.
Yeah, that's good.
That raises a question generally. Most people are struggling with exactly that problem, where they don't know what they don't know.
Correct.
They don't know what can happen. And when you talk about it, it sounds great, but lots of companies have thrown money at marketing programs that didn't work, or financing programs that didn't work, or manufacturing stuff that they didn't implement right, and they were doing the best they could. And when somebody says, I got the magic sauce, it's called AI, they go, eh. So they need to figure out how to invest smart in AI in order to leverage their business. How do they do that? What would be good advice to them? Because if you're a company that's only generating $20,000 in EBIT, and you need to figure out what can I do to supercharge my business, and somebody says AI, it's like, okay, what can I do with my $20,000?
Yep, 1,000% agree with you on that. So we've seen a couple examples. First one is, the answer I give to everybody is, if you're the business decision maker in that conversation, you should make it a requirement that in a, let's call it 35-hour work week, all of your employees should be allocated to spend 10% of their time learning AI. You have to make it a requirement.
Just ChatGPT, or what do you mean? That's pretty broad.
Yeah, tools. I was going to ask about tools.
Well, ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini, those three are predominantly three that are free, right? So it's not going to cost you your $20,000. There's a couple really good online YouTube prompting classes. So the biggest thing is asking the AI the right thing before you even get to the advanced stuff. I'll give you an advanced example here in a second also. And then the other piece of it all is you as the owner has to recognize that if you're making you're making the commitment to your team to make them more efficient, you have to make them more valuable as well. One of the biggest challenges, I think, we did an implementation where there was a very complex sales proposal process, and that a salesperson had to complete. We figured out the main reason why salespeople were not selling more was because they were spending too much time on the proposals, the administrative piece of the business. Mm-hmm. So we taught the sales team how to give themselves 8 hours back in their week. But what we found is after doing that, 90 days later, sales didn't go up any further. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that was the salespeople didn't know what to do with that time.
Okay, yeah.
It was like longer lunches, water cooler talk, like bullshitting, going to the gym. And so it becomes this you have to have an initiative into it to be like, no, I want to make you better at your job so you can be more valuable. I'm going to allocate that time with you, and then some basic resources to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it just becomes dabbling. And that's the biggest thing is, you can dabble so much with this stuff that it really does become kind of endless to dabble in it. The advanced version of this is, what we are doing now is, if you look at the big 4 consulting firms and you want so McKinsey, when we used to work with McKinsey in previous companies, we would pay them about $15,000 a week to get them to tell us what to do. We have taken our AI internal system, and for the past year, we collect all of McKinsey's job descriptions. And we've trained our AI on McKinsey job requirements and job systems. So we basically have compared and contrasted against that. And so our highest level premium AI resource is basically a McKinsey consultant at this point.
That's awesome.
And it costs a couple $100 an hour, not $15,000 a week.
That's awesome. Just one more in the back, and then we'll wrap up.
Assuming you built your own AI platform, but for those that are free or even premium, which one do you prefer to use?
That's good.
So, love this. So I could talk for 30 minutes about this. ChatGPT version 3.5 is the best one for research and deductive reasoning. Claude is fantastic for coding, vibe coding, building landing pages, and stuff like that. And then Gemini's analytical capabilities are amazing. And I'm saying that from someone who kind of looks underneath the hood at how they make things work. I think there's also one of my favorites is called Gamma, which is a PowerPoint presentation builder, is fantastic. Perplexity I think is really good. I think it doesn't, there's something that it doesn't land me the same place as the three that I just gave you.
That's good.
And I'll share one thing that I think is super important. You do have to be careful about security and your personal information and your client's information. And so one of the things that you can do, that if anyone wants to have a conversation about and talk about how you do it, it's super easy to do it. But so we use all these AI tools, but we download native versions of them to our servers. And so we download the models, our information never goes back to the models. So that way we don't worry about personal information, analytics, because if you sit there and you write, I have a breakthrough idea that will revolutionize this industry and do this better than anybody else, tell me how to build this, blah, blah. You can be sure that ChatGPT is going to be able to do that. And we are constantly testing things out. So one of the things I've done, I have a newsletter of about 56,000 people. And last year, I decided I wanted to train ChatGPT on Neal Conlon. And so I wrote in a blurb on what I wanted it to say. And then I sent it out to my 56,000 people. And I said, do me a favor, will you all tell ChatGPT who I am? And within 4 days, ChatGPT assimilated that, and I basically SEO'd myself into ChatGPT. And there's something so great and so wrong about that.
Well, also too, it's not necessarily, the information's not necessarily correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
You can make up whatever you want.
Correct. Correct.
Well, thank you, Neal. Let's give Neal a round of applause.
Thanks.
Appreciate you
Appreciate
for
it.
coming out.
It was great.